Radio X.
I'm Gordon Smart, this is Radio X. Welcome to the evening show. We have a very special guest, Ezra from Vampire Weekend. The last time we met was digitally via FaceTime. It was your debut, Ezra, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm like Rip Van Winkle. The last time I was doing interviews for an album, nobody did FaceTime interviews.
Yeah.
So I woke up that morning and I kind of looked at the schedule and I was ready to get on the phone and I was like, I really felt like I was stepping into the future.
It was only, 4 or 5 years or something like that, but the world's changed so much in that time.
Oh yeah, streaming, FaceTime, it's crazy.
But Ezra, you are here to talk about Father the Bride. So I think just before that, it was still known as Mitsubishi Macchiato was the holding name.
Yeah, right.
You explained everything about Father the Bride last time, but you told us that it was written on one unplugged electric guitar. But what I really want to know is who's the first person you play songs to when you've written them?
And I've written them. I mean, it's not always any one person, but I have an inner circle of people that I really trust, and between them it covers a lot of bases musically, and none of them are particularly interested in mid-2000s indie rock or whatever you would call the Vampire Weekend wave. So there's my girlfriend Rashida, who I always play stuff for, and so I'm always very interested to see what she likes, and where she falls. And her favorite music of all time is 90s R&B, so it's very very far away, but she still recognizes when a song is good and shows something interesting to say. Then, of course, as a producer, I worked with a lot on this album, Ariel Rechtshaid, and he and I have more similar backgrounds. We were both very heavily into ska in the 90s.
Seriously?
Yeah, well, he had a great ska punk band when he was a teenager called the Hippos. But actually, you occasionally meet people in America who'll be like, Ariel from the Hippos? Be like, yeah, he also produced, Haim and Adele, and they'll just be like, no, the Hippos, come on. So he and I have very similar tastes, but then there's also, on another pole, there's my buddy, Dave Maklovich, and he's this band Chromeo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
And so I've known him for a long time because he was a graduate student at Columbia when I was an undergrad. He was getting his PhD in French literature, and he's a very intellectual guy, but he also just loves music. And his bread and butter is hip hop and funk, really. But he's always been interested in Vampire Weekend, and he's always kind of given me guidance. So between all those people, if I ever play a song, and then of course my manager and stuff. So if I can play all those people a group of songs, and they all find something to like about one, it's such a good sign.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by that moment, that paint a picture for us of the moment, the place you would play that music. Do you have a sort of routine or a sort of superstition even about how you play and present that music?
It's not even that dramatic. I mean, if it's home, with my girlfriend, I'd probably be like, just blast it off the iPhone. What do you think of this? Yeah. I'll walk into the other room so I don't have to listen to it.
So that's the thing, do you sit and watch as they listen as well?
No, I try not to. And then, if we played people music in the studio, of course we blast it off the studio monitor, so then you're getting this huge, but you gotta be careful too, because you can sometimes blast music so loud and the bass is thumping, people are like, wow, this sounds huge. And then, then when it actually comes out, so many people will just be listening to it on earbuds and off their laptop speakers, so you can't always count on that, full spectrum thing.
I've always thought a good place to do it is in a car.
Oh yeah,
the acoustics are great.
We test it in the car all the time.
Right.
The car test is very important.
Yeah.
And a nice excuse just to get out of the studio and drive around.
Of course it is, free yourself up. So Ezra, you very kindly came in and recorded some session tracks for us here at Radio X. The first one is Harmony Hall, which is a beautiful, beautiful song. Just fantastic, because I think a lot of your music's quite intense. Like something like Cousins is you feel quite wound up by it. But this has just got a beautiful ambient, sort of quite a soothing sound to it.
Oh, thank you.
Can you, again, paint a little picture for us here of your recollections of when that song first came together?
Well, I remember two distinct parts, and they were years apart, because I remember kind of coming up with this melody in my head and this lyric about Harmony Hall years ago. And then there was kind of a built-in chord progression, so I'd sit down at the piano and play it, and it started very Baroque. And there's still a little piece of that in the song. Dum ba da 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 da. And then just little by little, I just started playing it more like in a house style. Ba da da na, and just became and then this house thing. And then I also had this for a while. I just kept saying I want to make a Baggy song. And also, you also got to understand, in America, nobody knows what Baggy is.
Yeah.
So it's and you can say, well, remember that song, You're Unbelievable. That's the only song that was
a tune.
Yeah, that was the only song that was like a hit. And people be like, oh yeah, and be like, that's Baggy. And they're like, okay, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
But I also just enjoy saying Baggy because it's such a novelty.
It's good.
So I'd be like, we gotta make a Baggy song.
Yeah.
So I had that the Baggy moment for a long time, and then. But that felt a bit incomplete, and it wouldn't really be a Vampire Weekend style to just make a Baggy song. It has to be Baggy plus at least 2 or 3 other things. And then when we really sat down to make it, I was looking for a verse, and I had this, we were kind of thinking what the chords should be, and we knew it had to be simple. And I said, well, I do have this guitar part.
Yeah.
And I played it for Ariel in the studio. He was like, oh, I think that would work. So we put it down and we harmonized it, and we said, but do they work going into each other? And it's definitely a scene shift, but we really liked that contrast. And that's when the song really came together.
So here we go, the first ever Baggy Baroque song from New York. It must be.
It's one, I'm running through, I don't know enough Baggy I was like running through my head to double check.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that was Harmony Hall, Vampire Weekend. Ezra is with us right here at Radio X today. Thanks for coming in, Ezra.
Thank you.
Jet lag, tired, feeling grim, or are you feeling all right?
I'm tired. I don't, lately I just can't sleep more than 3 hours at a time. Sometimes it adds up to 6 over the course of the night. But
that's all you need.
Yeah, I guess, I think you can function on 6 hours, but often it's broken up. So I'm still getting used to being over here.
So I mentioned earlier on that the holding title was Mitsubishi Macchiato, which has a real energy to it.
Yeah.
And I think it definitely, you can feel that vibe through all Vampire Weekend music. I think it's quite a good title for everything you've written. But what I'd like to know is if you were taking somebody for a Mitsubishi Macchiato, there's 4 parts to this question, so I'll try and break it down for you. Where would you take them?
Yeah.
Who would you take? What would you buy them to drink? And what music would you put on to listen to while you had your conversation?
And is this like anybody living or dead?
This could be anybody living or dead.
Okay, good question.
You could start with the drink and the venue if you like. Because that's the other thing, you've had the benefit of traveling the world, being in a band. So you've seen places that a lot of our listeners will never get the chance to go to. So is there a curious place you've been that you'd like to go back to, or somewhere that means a lot to you?
I mean, this is just on my mind because last summer we were in Japan, and like all musicians, Japan's one of everybody's favorite place to go. Going to Tokyo. Yeah, it's amazing. It's very familiar in a lot of ways, and then there's also things you never experienced anywhere else. And the one thing that, you could just, when you have a day off, you could just walk through Tokyo all day, and you always see something new. And but I particularly enjoyed just having a coffee all the time in Japan. There's it's one of the great coffee cities of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm probably a lot of people have heard about sometimes even London, New York, LA, you go to a nice coffee place, you might find a Japanese style cafe, or they might sell certain coffee products that come from Japan. It's up there with Italy for great coffee. So I go somewhere in Tokyo. I'm trying to think if I remember the names of any of the cafes I like to go to. I can say that there's this one, there's like a cool street with a lot of clothing stores in Tokyo. It's one of the classic streets called Cat Street. It's easy to remember, Cat Street. So I remember there's a cafe right at the top of Cat Street that we went to a lot. So I'll post it later somewhere. But a Cat Street cafe.
So you're in
Tokyo.
Cat Street in Tokyo. You're having a coffee.
Yeah.
Who's your guest and what are you listening to?
My guest, I think. Well, maybe I'll just say, because it's political, and since I've been doing press, people have been asking me about it, I'll say Bernie Sanders, because he's somebody that, Vampire Weekend campaigned for. He's obviously in the news. He's got this big, crazy Democratic primary coming up. And, I've had my brief moments with him on stage, and he's very polite, and he thanks everybody at the end of every event. But I never really got to chop it up one-on-one with him, so it could be interesting to, say, Bernie, you came all the way to Tokyo to have a coffee with me. Let's keep it real for a second. What's really going on?
Yeah.
Because with politics, it's so funny. We all support people, whether you literally campaign or you just vote for them. You support these people and you read about them and you watch them speak. But yeah, to really have a off-the-cuff conversation where I'd be like, enough with the talking points, Bernie.
Yeah.
I want to. What's really going on behind the scenes?
I'd love to hear that conversation.
Yeah.
I've no idea about his music taste at all. So what would you play him? You can say Father of the Bride if you like as well.
What would I?
Talk him through it track by track.
I would give him a track-by-track breakdown of Father of the Bride. Well, Bernie's. Yeah, what would I play Bernie? I mean, I assume that Bernie's taste in music is probably like, Bob Dylan and some 60s stuff. So, yeah, maybe I'd play him something new.
Yeah.
Just to kind of see what his take was.
The Hippos. Keep him with that.
Maybe I play him the Hippos. Bernie, are you familiar with the third wave of ska? And he'd probably be like, I don't know the first wave of ska. I don't know the second. I'd be like, all right. I want to take you back to...
Sounds like a good date, I'd love to come and enjoy that coffee with you. Now, Ezra, you've recorded these great tracks for us in Islington. The next one we're going to play is Sunflower. Now, we did an interview recently with Giles Martin, the son of George Martin, the late great George Martin, and we were talking about the White Album. And it's just hard to find out things that have never been talked about before with the Beatles because there have been so many interviews. But one of the really interesting things that came out is how Paul McCartney and Ringo remember particular smells of recording the White Album. So actually, when you see pictures of Abbey Road, it makes them hungry because they remember the smell of the kitchen and the food that was being cooked. So songs like Sunflower, can you just, to get us closer to that music and when you were writing it, can you just tell us what it reminds you of and where you were in the world at the time?
It's interesting. That's one of those songs that, the riff in the song, it borderline sounds like a guitar exercise because it kind of starts like you're running up a Mixolydian scale, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of just, it's one of those songs that you pick up a guitar, every time you're at the studio or at home, and little by little you just keep going back to the same place, and then suddenly you go a little higher, and then you start coming back down, and and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, it's more than just an exercise.
Yeah.
It's a riff. So I probably pieced that out little by little over weeks, just picking up a guitar. A lot of which would have been at Ariel's home studio, which is in LA, and when hanging out at Ariel's studio, it's like a little boring classic LA, like the 90% of the meals were tacos, so we're always ordering tacos for dinner. It's like a lot of coffees. He had a little Nespresso machine, so I'd hit that if we weren't going to take a walk to a cafe. So a lot of Nespresso and then just tacos.
Get the sense that caffeine plays a really big part in Vampire Weekend.
It kind of does. As I've gotten older, I realize and truly it is caffeine. Like I'm not a coffee snob at all. Like the first coffee that really hooked me was just the guy in the cart on the street in New York, like the corner guy. I was like, this is great. and now obviously there's like really bougie coffee everywhere, but it really is just it just makes me feel good. It's like that's that special window in the morning when I can really respond to emails and really have a optimistic feeling about the future.
What would Vampire Weekend sound like without caffeine? That's a question. There you are. Different.
Minor key. A lot of minor key. It would be like stoner metal.
So the song I've just been listening to the most recently is This Life, and it's got Haim's sister on it. I don't know which one.
Oh yeah.
You obviously know them very well. Can you shed some light on that for us, that collaboration?
Oh, well, that's Danielle singing backup vocals on that song. I've known her forever. I saw, and it's funny, like I just have so many connections to them. I knew their original manager.
Yeah.
So I literally saw Haim play in New York, some weird show in front of like 5 people, with me, their lawyer, a handful of people. People like exaggerate sometimes, where they're like, "Oh, I saw an early show from them." There's nobody. This truly, it wasn't. It was.
Yeah.
Okay, let me if I'm be realistic. 10 people. It's very empty. And so I knew them for such a long time, and then of course, once they started touring and stuff, I'd see them around all the time, and then it turns out we share even more. Have so many friends in common, and share Ariel as a producer. So there's always been like a huge connection, and on a song like This Life, Danielle was super cool. Just come downstairs and like try to throw some harmonies on, like no big deal.
That was
you
it.
know, and that's kind of I like when things are casual. Like this album, we have more collaborators than ever, but even then, it still doesn't quite have that like international pop feel. I don't think, because it's not like we got 3 hours to write a song together. It's like, yeah, stop by. You know, there's a real kind of almost family feel.
Yeah. So this is quite a quick question, really, but who's the dream collaborator? Because you have had a lot of collaborations on this, like Dave Longstreth, 30 Projectors.
Yeah, yeah.
If you could make a phone call now and I was the genie in the lamp that could make it happen, who would you have? Bernie Saunders.
Maybe Bernie has released music. It's quite interesting.
It's very diplomatic of you, Ezra.
If I could collaborate with anybody, I mean, you know, maybe it's just like getting older, but I found that now I'm so much more interested in musicians. I used to only be interested in songwriters and producers. You know, it just felt like I was a studio rat, kind of. And I'm just interested in like actual performers and just like people who really dedicate their life to one instrument, because that's not me. That seemed very alien to me. I was like, who cares how good you are at guitar? You could just, you know, fix it in the studio. So lately I've been actually really admiring some of those like 70s fusion musicians, and now I find when you know, if I'm like a little bit stoned late at night and I just want to like wind things down, I throw on a live performance, and I keep coming back to this performance of Mahavishnu Orchestra. I think it might actually be on like some English TV show, and you just watch these dudes shred, and it's just bananas. And so anyway, I'll say John McLaughlin, the guitarist. You know, now I'm actually like, I'm at that point in my life where I'm just like, want to hear. That guy's got some tasteful guitar playing. I'd love to hear.
That's a good choice. Brilliant stuff. Well, it reminded me a bit of Paul Simon, actually. And often Vampire Weekend, I can sense a bit of Paul Simon, but I think the song's beautiful. Now, this is a really odd question, so I apologise in advance.
Okay.
But I'm writing a book, and it's kind of toilet humour, really, called Slash Gordon. It's a pun on my name.
Yeah.
And over the last 15 years or so, every time I've met a musician or an actor or a comedian, I've asked a bit of a curious question about awkward encounters in the bathroom. So as some inspiration, we had Marcus Mumford on recently, and he'd dreamt all his life of playing with Bob Dylan, and he had arranged to meet him just before the Grammys to rehearse because they were doing a performance together. And as he walked into the bathroom, he realised it was Bob Dylan waiting outside, but there was nowhere for him to wash his hands after the bathroom, so he had to wait for 50 minutes to dry his hands properly before he could introduce himself properly to Bob Dylan. So that was his bathroom tale, his Slash Gordon. Do you have an encounter in the bathroom with a musician, with somebody famous, over all the years you've been in the band, that I can add to the book?
It's a good question. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, but I'm sure you've gotten some variation on this, and this a lot of people this happens to, is that feeling when you meet a fan or somebody was at the show or somebody saw you and they want to say hi, and you know they didn't wash their hands. Yes. It sounds like it from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it might literally be a Curb Your Enthusiasm scenario, but it's real and it's happened to me, and it's a little bit like, you know, I don't want to ruin that person's. I can always wash my hands after, but then you got to hang in the bathroom a little bit longer. So that certainly has happened. No Bob Dylan level bathroom interactions that I can recall.
There's no Chromeo, no hippos, not even a Vampire Weekend. So you're actually one of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
what happened?
We briefly touched on this the last time, but we had a really eventful night out about 13 years ago. And it was after, I think it was the NME Awards,
right?
The drummer was run over.
Oh yeah, right, yeah, jeez.
But that night, I think we had a really, we were all just in a
big
crowd
that was
people.
Fun
it was a great night
out. Until then.
And then went horribly wrong at the end of it. So yeah, my Slash Gordon that night would have been Ezra from Vampire Weekend, followed closely by nearly getting run over at the same time as your drummer, which was terrifying.
Oh boy, yeah, right there in Hoxton.
And he's fully recovered now, hasn't he? He's absolutely fine.
Oh yeah.
It was bad, wasn't it?
Well, it was scary, but it turned out to not be too bad ultimately.
Yeah. Dear me. By the way, you're in the book, so that's it.
Okay, great. I'm glad I am.
Another thing, I'd love to book you as a DJ sometime. I do this indie club night and up and down the country. But what I'd love to know is, what's your opening song? What would you play to get everybody involved? And what's your closing song?
Well, I've always been a little bit interested in this. To me, it seems like a very British phenomenon of indie disco.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's an equivalent in the U.S. So with indie disco, if I come in and just start dropping German techno, people would be like, mate, this is indie disco, what are you doing, right? That'd be the bad
I think
vibe.
I'd want that from you, Ezra.
If I just came in there like, everybody's expecting that I'm gonna like drop A-Punk, and then I just come in like super serious and do like my Boiler Room set, and I'm just like, shut up.
Yeah.
Just dance.
Just confused people looking, where's he going with this?
Yeah, just like, I just do a trance set. That's what I would.
Go really extreme and play La Bamba or something like that.
No, but I would, if I was truly trying to live up to the spirit of the indie disco. I don't know if this is cliche. I play like, New Order. Like what's it? Yeah. Up, down, turn around. Please don't let me hit the ground.
Heaven 17.
Yeah, I could.
Fun Boy 3, Heaven 17.
That'd be good. That'd be good stuff to play. Velvet Underground rock and roll. I always thought that's like a cool, dancey song. Maybe the Modern Lovers. Yeah. Roadrunner, something fun like that.
Right, yeah. I think you're going to get booked.
Okay, and then I'm going to go a trance.
The manager at the back's just going like that, money.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you, it's going to cost you. Ezra, thanks so much for coming in to Radio X. It's lovely to see you. It's brilliant to have you back. Father of the Bride is out in May, and it's another brilliant bit of work.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And this is a real treat for us, A-Punk. It's a song that we get asked for all the time on Radio X. Can you give us one little bit of information about it? Now, here's another example, right? Good Will Hunting, the film. Right. There's this great line when Robin Williams grabs Matt Damon by the throat, and he said, you can read every book in the world about any kind of theory, but you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. So when A-Punk was being written, tell me something about where that was and what was happening that nobody knows.
When A-Punk was being written, I'm pretty sure that I probably wrote the riff on an unplugged acoustic guitar, either in my dorm room or my first apartment after college. It was right in that time. And it's one of those things, it's hard to explain, but I'm very naive on the guitar. So if I write a little something, I'm like kind of happy about it. And then one time I finally took it off guitar and played it on piano to see what I was doing, and I was like almost horrified by how simple it was. It's just like chords. It's like the way the chords go dun 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 on piano. You would never write it on piano. And it's just one of those things where I was like, okay, it's good that I know piano, and it's good that I don't know guitar that well, because that's the only way I would have come up with that really simple riff.
And did you know it was a hit?
I thought it was a fun riff, but it was a little bit after like Oxford Comma and Cape Cod Kwassa Kwassa, some of our other early ones. So I was like, like similar to anybody, fan, musician, whatever. It was the new one, so I was kind of like, is this as good as Oxford Comma from 3 months ago? I don't know. We'll see. That's what I thought.
We will see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ezra. Fanfare Weekend, and here it is. This is A-Punk on Radio X.
Radio